Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Shh. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome here tonight. This is going to be a very interesting night for you guys, I'm sure. But before I introduce our speaker, please take out your phones, turn them off, and put them in your pocket. The peer ministers will be standing. The peer ministers are going to be standing around, and if they see a phone out, they are going to take it. So please make sure they do not see any phones. I also shouldn't hear anybody talking except me. Thank you. So tonight, we have Lori Ginecco with us. Lori is here from the Task Force on Human Trafficking at the Archdiocese of Hartford. Obviously, she will explain to you that this is getting to be a worse and worse problem, and I think some of us like to have our head in the sands that it's not around here. Lori's going to tell us the whole story. Remember, we're going to always be respectful of our speaker, and I don't want to hear or see anybody else chatting, okay? Unless she's asking questions, then of course you can answer them. Phones off, no chatting. And also I want to let you know that Lori not only is coming here from the task force with the diocese, but you haven't been to Trinita yet because the first retreat is in a couple of weeks. But she also does programming up at Trinita. She doesn't work with you guys there, but she's there at times that we're not. So she has that connection that you 10th graders will have a strong connection as soon as you come back from retreat at Trinita. So, okay, Lori. Hello.
I didn't think so. All right, is this better? Maybe they can hear. Okay. So we're going to pray with open eyes and willing hearts. Oh God, we didn't see them, but you did. The hundreds and thousands of human beings trafficked each year to join the millions who are trapped in modern-day slavery. Under terrible conditions, they work in factories, plow fields, harvest crops, work quarries, fill the brothels, clean homes, and haul water. Many are children with tiny fingers for weaving rugs and small shoulders for bearing rifles. Their labor is forced, their bodies beaten, their faces hidden from those who really don't want to see them. But you see them all, God of the poor. You hear their cry and you answer by opening our eyes and breaking our hearts and loosening our tongues to insist, no mas, no more. Amen. So I'm going to give you some stories. I don't know Mia, but this is a story that we use in our presentations. So Mia was a 14-year-old girl. She was excited to be dating a 19-year-old boy. By nature, she was a little insecure. She began to feel special as her school friends told her about the cute older boy she met on Kik. I have no idea what that is. That's my age. A popular app for meeting people. This new boyfriend showered her with attention, and eventually, when they met in person, he began to shower her with gifts. And for the first few months, everything was perfect. One day, he asked her to send her some nude photos of herself. Not wanting to, she said no, but he continued to ask, sometimes jokingly, sometimes telling her that if she really loved him, she would trust him and send some. Eventually, she gave in, not wanting to destroy the fairy tale she was living. What happened next was tragic. In reality, her boyfriend was much older than 19. Having obtained the photos, he began to sexually extort her, threatening he would show the photos to her parents and everyone at school if she didn't have sex with him, with his friends and strangers too. Mia was trapped. As a result, for 3 months, she was repeatedly sold to engage in sex for profit by her trafficker, her boyfriend. Even though she continued to go to school and sleep in her own bed at night, Mia's body was being sold for profit. So traffickers are not necessarily people who come out of the shadows. Sometimes they're people that are in your school. And I'm not saying that it's just young men. Also, women are, sadly, known to traffic too. All right, let me tell you about Roberto. Roberto arrived, this is labor trafficking. Roberto arrived in the United States legally under an H-2A visa, which allows seasonal farm laborers to work for specific employers. To get on a list to come to the United States for jobs, Roberto paid a fee and turned over the deed to his parents' property to an intermediary in Mexico. When Roberto arrived in Georgia, the situation was not at all what the recruiter had described. There were hundreds of workers living together in cramped barracks and isolated from nearby towns. The day they arrived, all their personal documents were confiscated. They were prohibited from talking to strangers and could only be at work or at the place where they slept. When it was hot, some men passed out in the fields. They were regularly denied water while working. If they could not keep it up, they were told to sit on the bus without pay. They were charged up to $150 for rides to the doctor, if they were even allowed to access medical care. Eventually, they were moved to Wisconsin, where they faced similar conditions. Roberto felt that he could not stop working while in the United States for fear of losing his parents' property, and no one else spoke up for fear of deportation or worse. So let's go back to Mia, and I'll tell you a true story. I said I taught Catholic high school, and there was a lovely couple. They had been dating for quite a long time, and same thing, not trafficking, but coercion. Her loving boyfriend asked for naked pictures, and she said yes. And then when he broke up with her, he sent them to everybody in the school, just to show her that he had control. Roberto, what's sad is that we don't realize it's right under our noses. If you drive by some farms and see people that are out there working, you think that they're getting paid. Well, in Granby, and this was a couple of years ago, there was this whole kind of breakthrough where this man asked, he was working in the fields, if he could go to church, and that was St. Teresa's, I don't know what the new name is since everybody changed their names, in Granby. He wanted to go to Mass. And for whatever reason, his trafficker let him. And when he got there, he told somebody, and it blew it wide open, right in our backyard. And I'm sure that that's not the only place, but that man had the courage. And that was all shut down. So some of our very vegetables and things are people in forced labor. We talked about Mia and we talked about Roberto, but who are we in this scenario? And we are made in the image and likeness of God. You know that. I'm sure you've heard that 100 times if you've heard it once. Made in the image and likeness of God. And what that means, how I explain it, that I cannot come at you and say something absolutely disrespectful to purposely hurt you or demean you without understanding that I am doing that to God. I'm doing that to God. Because if I'm made in the image and likeness of God, then I should not be saying that to you. Quick story. I thought of a good way to people who kind of aggravated me, that I would call them wackadoodles. I thought, that's kind of a benign name. That isn't something really is going to hurt anybody's feelings. Not that I said it to their face. Until I really thought about that and prayed about this. That even calling somebody a wackadoodle, I was demeaning myself, but also demeaning God. It's important to remember this because they are human beings. For the teens that are trafficked, they want to go to school just like you. They want a life just like you. And many of them don't have that. All right, so that was the easy part. So for the overview, I'm going to give you some definitions. I'm going to tell you about traffickers and victims around the world at home, and then what we can do. So as I said, there's two types of trafficking, and you can see, I don't have to read it to you. Sex trafficking is exactly what it is, that somebody, and just like Mia, could be going home every night, but during the day or on the weekends is being used and abused. And they cannot get out of it for fear. Is their family going to be hurt? Are they going to be hurt? Labor trafficking, same thing. It's a lot in the news about everybody wanting to come to the United States, and I'm not going to get into that debate. But they want to work. And so some people will pay people to get them here into the country and then are forced and live like Roberto has lived. So if you're curious as to how much money they make on people, look at those figures. Right now, there are 28 million people, 28 million people that are being trafficked. That's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. If you add in forced marriage, and that does happen in a lot of cultures, where the girl has no choice in who she's going to marry and can be married off as early as 13 or 14. Add that, and then look at the amount of money. $150 billion are made on human beings. Human beings. Any questions up to that point? Do you believe me? Do you think this is true? Has somebody ever talked to you about human trafficking? Have you heard it? Do you talk about it in school? Am I the first person that's telling you about human trafficking? Can you talk? Somebody tell me. Am I the first person? No. So you've heard this. Where have you heard it? In school? Are they teaching you in school about this? Good. All schools? Well, that's good. So now I'll ask you more questions as we go along if you're learning that in school. All right, types of sex trafficking in the United States. Escort services, you can read it. Massage businesses, outdoor solicitation, bars, strip clubs, cantinas, pornography, sex tourism, and brothels. Another story. So I live in East Hartford. My friend and I, when I was teaching, we decided we were going to go to this place for foot reflexology. Have you heard of that? Where you go and they massage your feet. It's not, a pedicure or anything like that. Your pressure points on your feet. It's supposed to be very relaxing and easing tension. And so we went in Glastonbury, in a very prominent mall, strip mall. We thought it was kind of weird when we walked in. First of all, we only could do it online. We could only register online. And so when we got there, this gentleman comes out from the back room, and it's very kind of dark. And we sit down, and these two young women, they don't speak English, come out, and they begin to work on our feet. Now, I didn't think anything too, it was the first time we had ever done anything like that. I wasn't really suspicious until I realized, one, they couldn't speak English, and two, when we tried to tip them, they wouldn't take it. What did catch our attention was that there were a steady stream of people, this was kind of curtained off, that were walking by us down the hall. And we couldn't see who it was, a couple of men, and we were only there for an hour. 3 weeks later, maybe 4 weeks later, it was raided. That was human trafficking. Those women that were easing the tension in my feet were being trafficked. It was a cover for what was going on, and so people made the appointment, and you'd come in, and you think this is all fine. After those working on our feet, which is gross enough, that there were people waiting for them in the back. Glastonbury. We can't think that this doesn't happen everywhere, and that it wasn't by choice. All of these things happen right underneath our noses. Labor trafficking, a lot of that, the same thing, domestic work, people that are forced to work at whether they are maids or child care providers. Restaurants and food service, we don't often think about that servers, busboys, people in the kitchen, peddling and begging. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but I want to ask you, have you noticed on the highways or street corners here in this area, and I don't know if it's here yet, but we have it a lot in the Hartford area, East Hartford, people standing on street corners begging with signs. Yes? You have it. Okay. So I began to get suspicious because you see the same people standing there day after day. And so I started to become very observant and then watched. We were driving by, my husband and I watched this young man run away from his spot, this was by the Buckland Mall, and hop into a car and drive away. And I said to my husband, I think these are people that are being trafficked. And it's just gotten worse and worse, where you see them all over, getting frustrated if they're not getting, they throw away their food, they don't want that, they just want the cash. Now some, it could just really be because they want the money, whether it's for drugs or alcohol or housing. But I do believe that that is a good indication of labor trafficking. Questions? All right, who are the victims? You could be a victim. Your friend might be a victim. Somebody in your family might be a victim. Please know that you're not immune from this. And just as many girls that are trafficked, so are young men. And the number is rising. So who are the victims? So look at this slide. They don't really care who you are, where you came from, how much money you have, any of that. Doesn't matter your race, your ethnic background, none of that plays into if they want to be able to traffic you and they can convince you, they're going to use you. And you look at all of that. Now, there is a problem sometimes with high-risk populations that if there has been trauma or abuse in somebody's life, people are very good at honing in on that. Believe me, these traffickers are not stupid. They know exactly how to get somebody. Runaways, foster kids, put into homes that really aren't safe, but the program, the foster program, doesn't have enough resources, I guess, to make good interview families. And I'm going to say it again, and it can be you. It can be you or somebody you know. So the techniques of traffickers, very, very, very smart, and you could look at that. Just like Mia and just like Roberto, they offer something that they think that you want. And for a while, you're going to get it. And then after that, you're locked in. You're absolutely locked in. Offer promises, a pretend boyfriend, an adult who might know that you're having a hard time, whether it's at school or at home or whatever, and wants to be your friend, wants to help you out. Now, I've been working with teens my whole life, and I'm going to tell you honestly, I'm not a friend to a teen. I'm an adult. And in that way, and I've never said to anybody that I worked with that we're friends, because that is an odd relationship. I mean, in all reality, I'll give my age. Do you want to hang around with a 66-year-old woman with white hair, goes to bed at 8 o'clock? That's funny. Now, at least you could laugh. No, you don't. But if somebody approaches you in that way, we need to be aware of that. They want to be your friend. We're going to talk a lot about internet and social media, and I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about my administrative assistant, Alyssa, who worked for me during college. You could see all the things that they hold against you. They're going to hurt you. They hurt people that are trafficked. Threats of violence, psychological manipulation. If you're not from the United States, take your documents away. Debt and drug addiction. And most people don't want to say anything because they feel like it's their fault. Mia didn't say anything. Roberta didn't say anything. Because somehow you're made to feel that it is your fault. And it is never your fault. Never your fault. So I'll be honest. I know Snapchat. I don't have Facebook. We used WhatsApp when we traveled on a church trip. Couldn't figure it out. So you tell me, do you know these? Do you know all of them? The apps here? Hopefully you don't know Grindr. Or Bumble. Okay, shh. So I want to say to you, I want you to understand that at times we think things like that are safe. And most times they probably are, and then most times they're not. So I'm going to tell you about my friend Alyssa while she was working for me. The first one, she had gotten an email, a random email, had her correct email address, and it was very focused. She pretended she was our pastor, Father Bob, and that he needed her to run and get him a gift certificate for $300, and he would pay her back, but he had to give this to one of his parishioners. Now, Mass was going on. This was on a Sunday morning, and so we're getting ready for our kids to come in after Mass, and she says, you know what, Mrs. J, sorry, I got to run an errand. Is that okay? And I said, sure. She didn't tell me what it was. When she got back and after Mass, she, and she couldn't give it to Father Bob. She had to email it or something back to this person who had created an email that said Father Bob Kwiatkowski, but it wasn't him. She was mortified and felt horrible when she found out that that was a scam. It wasn't Father Bob. So for money, they also are very savvy. The next one was a little bit weirder. I don't understand Snapchat, and I'll be honest, but she had an account, and she said it was private, and she got a weird, very weird, I don't know if you say comments or whatever, this young girl talking to her about how beautiful, and Alyssa is extraordinarily beautiful, how beautiful she is, and I think we're so much alike, and that we could be friends, and all of that, talking, and she's like, Mrs. J, what do you think that is? And I said, it's a scam, and we're going to call the police and report it to the Human Trafficking Commission. But we're so trusting because we think that all people are good. And they are good. They're made in the image and likeness of God, but there are a lot of people who have ulterior motives. And Alyssa was shocked. It happened to her one more time, and this is all private, all her media. Facebook, too. Do you know that Facebook now, 40% of trafficking communication is happening on Facebook? Now, again, I don't have Facebook. I've never even seen Facebook. But they are using that also as a way to traffic people. Very, very smart. Questions? Have you used any of these, those sites? Snapchat? Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know why they're laughing. You're the only person that answered. You said yes. Why are they laughing at you? Yes, thank you. I agree. Good job. So you know them. You know them better than me. You know them. And so I want to tell you, I'm not trying to scare you. Shh. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you to be careful. As smart as you think you are, they are that much smarter. All right, warnings. You can see on there the warnings about human trafficking. And I wish I had paid better attention to these warnings, although, to be honest, I don't know what I could have done there with that, that salon. All of those things happen. Abusive or controlling boyfriends, multiple cell phones, injuries, signs of physical abuse. I want you to look, though, on the back of this young woman's neck. What do you see? That requires an answer. What do you see? A barcode. Don't you absolutely feel that that is the most disgusting thing that you've seen? That a trafficker actually tattoos his or her property with a barcode. A barcode. And we've seen this in lots of different, so the task force is always talking about new things, meeting new people. And we have seen this time and time again. Interesting that it's always on under, hair or whatever, so you can't see. But that's just to give you a sense of the lack of respect for somebody made in the image of God, not to them, property, absolute property. So, warning signs of labor trafficking. I actually was quite surprised by this because I guess we don't really think about the isolation, being under close watch, controlled, unable to leave the work environment. There's a part of us that says, well, people have a job, but not if you're trapped in that job, not if you don't get a paycheck. And especially if your identity is taken away from you. And all of this happens in Connecticut, in Guilford, in the United States of America. Not to mention in other countries. So, let me skip that. Around the world and at home. How many have seen the movie Taken? Thank you. It's an oldie. It's an absolute oldie. But it's about a dad. I can't remember what he was, some type of FBI agent. I mean, he had unbelievable strength, contacts, or whatever. But his daughter was kidnapped and brought to another country. And then scenes, you see her being constantly drugged and used and abused. Now, when that first came out, I think that was a shock to people. But it also was a misnomer in that we began to think that the people that were being trafficked were from other countries and that it wasn't happening here. Partially based on that movie, even though she had gotten kidnapped in the United States, her and her friend. But in reality, victims of human trafficking, whether it's labor or sex trafficking, 77% of the people are Americans in this country. Again, I have to say it again. It could be somebody in your school. It could be somebody down the street. It could be somebody sitting in this church right now. It's nothing to joke about. Because it's really, really happening. And I'm not trying to scare you. I want you to be aware. I want you to be aware that this happens all the time. And these are all statistics that we have collected over the years. So this is called a hot map. You can see up there. And that the darker red areas are areas of heavy trafficking. And then the lighter yellow-blue areas with less trafficking. And so look at where we see it. A lot of it is in that, right there, the northeast corridor. Certainly there's a high percentage in Florida, also in California. That doesn't mean that it's not happening in other places. Now, I'm going to show you this one. Glitch here. All right, where's Guilford? Is there a red spot there? No. So you think you're safe, right? No. No, you're not. But you're right, and the reason why I say this, because the people who came 2 years ago, part of the task force, Terry Steele was telling me that a lot of the conversation centered from the teens of St. George then, that they cheered when they noticed that there was nothing in Guilford. But that's a misnomer. It doesn't mean that traffickers aren't here. it probably just means that a lot of them haven't been identified, because it does happen everywhere. Do you know where the Berlin Turnpike is? Yes. Is that the same yes, girl? Yes, it is. Good. So the Berlin Turnpike, what is on the Berlin Turnpike if you've driven on the Berlin Turnpike? Berlin, yeah, the town, yes. But what is on it? No parks. It's a road. They are all little small motels. In its day, when the Berlin Turnpike, that was a major thoroughfare. And so truckers would be, with their goods going down, and there was tons and tons of hotels and motels. You ever hear the phrase no-tell motels? You are good. I won't ask you to explain it. Oh, good, because I'm not going to explain it. It's an inappropriate comment. But there's a book written about the Berlin Turnpike, and that's Newington, Berlin. You can get on it in New Britain, go all the way. It's a major thoroughfare. And the book is all about those little, small motels being used for trafficking. If you ever get a chance to drive down that road, you're going to understand what I mean. Because it's not like your parents, you're on your way to vacation, and they're going to pull in and say, oh, we have to stay tonight at this little motel. Not at all. But you'll always see cars. Now, I will also say that a lot of people who are homeless are put up in those hotels. But based on what that author said in his book, that is a major thoroughfare for trafficking. All right. For those of you who think that this doesn't happen in Guilford. So, July 2019. So the police are very good about posting ads in newspapers or any type of circulation that would get a trafficker's attention or somebody who wants to buy somebody. And in 30 days, the ad was offering sex with children. Absolutely repulsive. In 30 days, the ads got more than 5,000 hits. 5,000 hits. 5 people who responded in person were arrested. It does happen in Guilford. Absolutely does happen. Because there'd be no reason for the police to post those ads. Am I boring you, gentlemen? No? Do you know who Jeffrey Epstein is? Do you? How about you, gentlemen? Do you know who Jeffrey Epstein is? Tell me who he is. Oh, you can't take her line. She's good. Tell me about him. What do you know? Don't read. Tell me. Look at me. What do you know about him? Okay. You chat. I'll come to you and pressure you too. Yes. But, yes, bad guy, but we didn't know he was a bad guy because he was so rich. But for years, he was trafficking girls, young girls, absolutely young girls. Rich, didn't need to do this, had a lot of, but he also had a lot of people helping him, enabling him. So he committed suicide, cowardly, once he was arrested. He had a partner, which I find shocking, Ghislaine Maxwell, who she ran away. She was on the run for months, hiding out in Vermont. They finally did catch up with her, and she got 20 years in prison for helping him. Do you know how she helped him? Are you afraid if a woman approaches you on the street or asks you for help? Oh, now we're going to say, yeah. Yes. Yes. Like a mother. Like a mother. And would that be a woman normally who would do that? Can you pick, well, no, I'm talking about that would, I know what you mean. I think I phrased it wrong, and I apologize. But I want you to think about women that you trust. Teachers, parents, aunts, whatever, your friends, your best friend's mother. Wouldn't you trust that woman? And so what she did, yes, what she did was even worse. Even worse. There was nothing that this man, I mean, he was despicable. But she gained their confidence and said to them, as you said, it's going to be okay. It wasn't okay. It wasn't okay. And yet, 20 years, which honestly, I don't think it's enough, but I'm not in charge. Questions? Any questions? Can you just give me a time? Oh, okay, good. All right, I got to speed it up a little bit. All right. So how are we fighting human trafficking? And I think it's important that you know. Right from the very beginning, when Pope Francis became Pope Francis, he has made it his mission to work against human trafficking. Because I want to bring you back to that part where I said, we're made in the image and likeness of God. And all of these people are being abused. But they're still made in the image and likeness of God. So he has these quotes. I think the one that most moves me is an open wound on the body of society. Or maybe a blind eye that we all don't see it. The Catholic Church, the Vatican, has an organization that is also working against human trafficking. The U.S. Conference of Bishops, the same thing. There's a wonderful organization now, the U.S. Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking, and the Archdiocese of Hartford. So you should know that this task force is all volunteers. It's people who answered the call for this office to learn about human trafficking. It took me probably about 6 months having to read the binder and then take a test after each one, write the answers, so they knew that I knew what human trafficking. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't want to do it. I still don't want to do it. I was uncomfortable coming here, but I believe that I have to do it. It's important that people know about it. And I would bet that everybody on that task force feels exactly the same way. So this week, after tonight, then I go to another one. There'll be a totally different crowd. 35 women, elderly women, that will, again, teach them. Catholic Church teaching, I know you know this, that we believe in the sacredness and the human dignity of life. It's in our Catholic catechism. It's what we're all about. The United States government, especially its Homeland Security, has a blue campaign. And that is true, and that they have done, I myself have done that. We had posters, and we would take them and put them up in bathrooms wherever we could, that people could understand that you could contact Homeland Security if you were in danger. I'm going to skip here and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to ask your permission that I can have them take out their phones. What I want you to do is take a picture of this slide. Only that, and then put your phones back. It's really important that you know the hotline number. hopefully, all right, so far I've only seen a couple phones up. Even if it is something that doesn't pan out, that it wasn't trafficking, they keep all of these records. It's very, very important. There's no judgment. That they just need to get as much information from people who might be aware of somebody being trafficked. We've heard this 500 times. If you see something, say something. And the best way to do that is to call the trafficking line. All right, other ways. So you're doing it now, tonight. You're learning about human trafficking. And I guess, I don't necessarily think you're bored. I think some of you are very uncomfortable with me talking about trafficking. And that's good. Stay uncomfortable. And make sure that you make yourselves aware. Obviously, praying is a big, important part. Pray for the victims, all of the people that are being used. Offer support through the Human Trafficking Committee. Maybe, since you're having it in school, you probably don't need, what grades has it in school? You were saying some of you have it. Is it 9th grade, 10th grade? Just high school. Is it part of the, okay, wait, guys. Is it part of the curriculum? No, so individual teachers take that on? Shh. Good. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I also understand schools that would have a challenge with that. All right. Questions? No questions. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit. The live stream is going off, so the peer ministers have graciously said yes to a prayer service that we're going to do. And I ask you really to be respectful of all of them, but also this prayer.